Great. Well, good morning or good afternoon to everyone. My name's Heather Burke. I'm the National Partnership and Volunteer Program Manager for the Corps. And I'm really happy today to have Chris Hennessy. He's the Eastern Field Director for Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And he's going to talk about their organization, the mission, some of the work that they've done with the Corps and with other agencies like the Corps, and try and stimulate some ideas of how we can work together. We signed a national MOU with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers in August. And so we just really want people to know what we can do together and go from there. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Chris. I will say if anyone is not on mute, please mute yourself. And if you have questions, feel free to type those in the chat. I will be monitoring that. And we'll have time for questions at the end if you want to come off mute and ask those verbally. So with that, I will turn it over to Chris.
Thank you very much, Heather. Thank you all for being here today. I'm glad to get a chance to talk a little bit about BHA and what we do. My name is Chris Hennessy. I'm the Eastern Field Director for Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And basically what that means is that I run our field team here in the Eastern US. So that's from Maine roughly to Kansas. And I have a staff of 5 or 6 that work directly with me to manage our members. We're a volunteer organization, so they work directly with the members, work with partners like the Army Corps, and work with elected officials on the national and state level. So that is basically my job. I've been with BHA 6 years this month, and yeah, it's a great organization. I love what I do. So again, thanks for having me here today and for being here to learn about us. I'm going to go through slides here and give you a view of what BHA is. I don't want to get too far into the weeds so that we can have time to talk about ways to work together in the future, and also kick around the what's in the MOU. So Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. We are a North American nonprofit. We operate in Canada and the US. We have, I think we have 48 chapters, state chapters in the US, or we cover 48 states in the US and 4 provinces in Canada. BHA was formed in Oregon in 2004 by a group of 7 folks who were sitting around a campfire, and the discussion turned to the fact that while there were a lot of great nonprofits working on the landscape, there was nobody that was representing the landscape itself and hunters and anglers' access to it. So there's really great, organizations like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, National Wild Turkey Federation, Trout Unlimited, who were focused on, species or certain parts of the landscape, but nobody was representing all of it, and nobody was representing hunters and anglers at large. So they felt that was something that was needed, and from that campfire grew BHA slowly over the first 10 years, regionally in the Pacific Northwest and into Montana, Colorado. And then around 2014, our recently departed CEO, Land Tawney, was hired by the board. The board had decided at that point that it was time to grow the thing, and that it had potential. So Land was hired. He had worked for National Wildlife Federation and others for a long time, and he was hired to grow it and make it national, and he did that. BHA took off in 2014 and grew to, I think they had maybe 9 chapters when Land started, and grew to covering 48 states and parts of Canada that we have now. So that's the short version of the kickoff of BHA. We are a volunteer chapter-based organization. So I live in Pennsylvania. We have a state chapter here. It's the Pennsylvania chapter. There's 1 chapter for this state. We have a few chapters that cover multiple states. not many, but a few. And so that's how the volunteer leadership is set up. We have boards made up of volunteer men and women who are charged with, representing us in that state and leading the way for membership, fundraising, advocacy work, boots on the ground kind of stuff, and everything that we do. So we rely heavily on we're truly a grassroots organization. We have nearly 700 elected chapter leaders serving on those boards in the U.S. and Canada. So members, we're about 30,000 members in North America. Our membership is interesting in the hunting and fishing space because it's young. 76, this is the latest info too. This is from we do a survey every summer. So this is new info. I had to update the slides here because we just got done our summer survey, but 76% of our members are 54 or younger, which is not typical. A lot of your hunting and fishing organizations tend to skew older, and that's always been a thing about BHA. And we enjoy it and try to take advantage of our youthful component. When it comes to political makeup, we're truly a bipartisan organization. A third of our folks identify as independent, and then you can see the other breakdowns there. But that's important to us because we do work on advocacy in the federal and state capitals, and we do want to represent everyone. We're a nonprofit. We're not going to be overtly political ever, for one side or the other, but we do work in politics. Another thing that we embrace, and this is sort of another evolution at BHA. When it started out, we were really talking about the founders were talking about backcountry, real backcountry, wilderness with a W, really far out places. That has changed as we have grown because lots of places in the US and Canada don't have that. But we do have wild places where you can hunt, fish, and otherwise, recreate, camp, bird watch, take photos. So, backcountry is a state of mind for us. We have a lot of folks who live in urban areas and will travel to hunt or hunt where they live. We have one of our members I like to talk about a lot is a guy named Brandon Dale who guides carp fishing in Central Park in Manhattan. He also hunts and fishes all over the place, but he's a great example of, wilderness or backcountry is where you find it or what you have to work with. So that's an important part of who we are. I want to talk before I go into focus areas. I'm going to slide back here a little bit. Our average member, I would say, is someone who hunts and fishes, but our membership is not completely folks that hunt and fish. We have a lot of folks who over the years have learned that BHA advocates for access for everyone and advocates for wildlife, for the benefit of wildlife itself and for anyone who appreciates wildlife. So we've got a fair number of members that aren't hunters or anglers at all, but they do support our work. So I think that's an important point to make. Let's see. So our focus areas, we've really got three pillars that we started off with, and another that's not on this slide that we'll talk about because it probably has a lot to do with our intersection with the core. So our focus areas are access and opportunity, which means simply having places to hunt and fish and recreate on public land and being able to get there. And in a lot of places in the US, there are challenges to that are either historic or crop up or are caused by decision makers at some level. And we try to work to make sure that people have access to public lands. That is number one. Number two is public lands, and we call it public lands and waters, but really what that means is that the quality of the land, the wildlife, the habitats, it's not just public land, but it's quality public land. It's a place where fish and animals can thrive, and not just game animals, all kinds of animals, birds, small mammals, the whole kit and caboodle. We want quality wildlife habitat and robust wildlife populations. And then the third, which is, we work on this issue, but it's not super prominent because it just doesn't happen that often, is a fair chase, which um, means, pursuing game in a way that's fair to, both the game and to others on the landscape, other humans on the landscape. So what that has come down to mean lately, the last 15, 20 years, is technology and how it's used or misused on in hunting and on public land. Let's see. So access and opportunity, this is again our big one. What that means is, defending stream access. A lot of states have different rules. Usually stream access is covered under state law. A lot of different rules, changing rules about who has access to what water, how can the public use it. We advocate for landlocked public lands. If you're familiar with the corner crossing issue at all out west, it's where public and private land are in a checkerboard pattern on the landscape. We're working on, that's one of our big access issues, but there's others, and there's landlocked public lands that are historic all across the US. So trying to create public easements or accesses into those is one of our priorities. And then again, just enhance access everywhere that we can. This is a specific example from New Mexico about some work we did to make sure that public access remained public. This is the corner crossing issue that we're working on primarily in Wyoming right now. Also, the public lands and waters piece is habitat conservation, making sure that the water's clean, the forests are managed well, and that people like you who work on public land and water are enabled to do your best to maintain, improve, and keep it healthy for the future. Habitat conservation is pretty self-explanatory. Priority landscapes are something that the national leadership will identify, usually on a yearly basis, but the things tend to stick in there for a few years because they're big issues. Things like the North Slope of Alaska, conserving that's one of our priority landscapes. Another priority landscape is the boundary waters in Minnesota. It's been threatened recently with by mining. So those are a couple of like the big regional or super important issues that we will elevate to a priority landscape issue. BHA, one of its early work was trying to prevent illegal motorized use on wilderness areas, and that has stuck. We still try to do our best to help management agencies control, regulate, and prevent illegal OHV use. We're not against using motorized vehicles or any other sort of transport, but we do want people to follow the rules, especially where it comes to places that are really only supposed to be accessed by foot or by horses or maybe boats, non-motorized boats. We want to make sure that solitude and level setting access stays that way and isn't trampled on by people illegally using machines. Fair chase we sort of covered. Programs. So other than our chapter work, we have a couple of arms that focus on certain things. One of the biggest and growing quickest right now is the Armed Forces Initiative, or AFI. AFI is made up of veteran, active duty, and military families. The AFI program is set up at bases all across the U.S. and also in regional groups. There's a lot that goes into AFI, but a big piece of it is that they take veterans or active duty military on backcountry trips every year. I'm not sure of the number, but it's in well into the 25 or 30 trips a year range at this point. And not only do they go on trips, it's not just a vacation. They learn how to appreciate the outdoors and what it can bring to your mental and physical well-being. But they also get a conservation lesson, sort of a conservation 101, and how wildlife conservation works. Overview of the agencies, federal and state. So it's an education program as well. Collegiate clubs are just mini BHA chapters that are at colleges and universities across the U.S. We have, I think, 29 of those at the moment, completely student run. And then hunting for sustainability, which is sort of our R3. If you're familiar with the term R3, it's recruit, retain, reactivate. It's about keeping people in hunting and fishing, or recruiting people to hunting and fishing, or getting people back into hunting and fishing. And it's important because hunters and anglers foot the bill through their license fees and other fees for a lot of wildlife and habitat work. AFI, sort of covered that. I don't know that we need to dig in any more on collegiate. Stewardship. This may be where we intersect to the greatest degree with the core. Stewardship is quickly becoming one of the main focuses at BHA beyond our advocacy work. We started out slow in stewardship and have grown into it pretty quickly. In the West particularly, and in the East it's coming along, but our landscape here is different, and it's taken us a little longer to get into it here. But anyway, we do all kinds of stuff. We do habitat work, including fence removals. I don't know how many miles of unused barbed wire we removed this year in Colorado, Wyoming, and Nevada, but it's miles, many miles. We do plantings, we do invasive species removal, cleanups of all kinds. Those are popular here in the East. In a few places, we've done guzzlers, which are, if you don't know what a guzzler is, it's a water source for wildlife in dry areas, sometimes a critical water source. Beaver analogs, which are man-made structures that recreate beaver dams in places where they don't have them, but they should be on the landscape. Stream work of a bunch of different kinds has been done in the East and West, and we're looking to get into doing more of that. There's a bunch of other types of stewardship that's not on here, but another one that we're really getting into where we can is citizen science, which has been really fascinating. Our New England chapter is working with the University of New Hampshire on a very large camera trap project across wild areas in New England and Maine to try and document the relationship between predators and moose. And their part in that, or the chapter's part in that, really is to hike through all these wild areas and pull cards out of the cameras and put fresh ones in, because there's a lot of cameras spread over a lot of wild places, and it takes people that are able to go out and do that. And our young outdoorsy wilderness focused members are able to do that and are having a good time. The project's just getting started, but they've done a couple field days, and they're really enjoying it. So that's a neat example. Let's see. Yeah, as an advocacy group, we do work in the capitals, federal and state levels. These are some of our priorities for this year: grasslands, RAWA, Recovering America's Wild Act, which would help fund wildlife work across the U.S., and then mine remediation, Hard Rock Mines Act. A few things that we're looking at. Oh, and here we're up on our specific examples for work that BHA and the Army Corps have done together. This first one, I think this is the one that Heather was able to see in person. I was not. This is as close as I've gotten, so Heather's got one up on me. She was at Lake Shelbyville. But our Illinois chapter, led by a fellow named Drew Kaczynski, had this idea to work with the Army Corps at Lake Shelbyville to create a walking trail archery park. So 3D archery is these durable foam targets that look like critters usually, sometimes Sasquatches and other sort of fun things. But they had this idea to create this archery park at Lake Shelbyville because there's nothing like it around there. Apparently, there's nowhere in that area for people that are into archery to go shoot in an atmosphere like that. So they had this original idea. They went to the Corps. They got support from staff and scored a grant, I believe, from the Corps, and then began working on the physical parts of it in spring 2003, and it's been opened. And from what I heard, the first chapter event was held there a few weeks back, and people had a great time. So, and I believe there's a few more physical improvements that have to happen before there's a kickoff grand opening, but it's there and people are using it. The photo on the bottom left here is from, I believe, the walking tour maybe that Heather was at. And then the photo on the right is from inside a structure that they built that replicates hunting from inside a blind. I guess that's a white-tailed deer out there in the background. So that's interesting. It gives people a real world way to practice so that when they get in the actual field, they can be effective and ethical when hunting with archery equipment. One of the only other example I have with me today in the slides is from Buckhorn Lake in Kentucky. This is a recent pack out of volunteers from Kentucky, and Army Corps staff got together and pulled a whole bunch of, looks like, trash and plastic things and a lot of floating debris out of the lake, 1,200 gallons to be exact. They also have done the chapters work with the Army Corps there to do other cleanups in the past, and also did a fish habitat project. And I think on this recent day that they were there, they also did some pollinator work. So those are my examples. BHA is very good at electronic communication and telling our story. So if you have any interest in following up anymore, we've got a website. We have podcasts, which is very popular, called Podcast and Blast with Hal Herring. Whoops. And we're all over social media, so we're not hard to find. And we'll end with our CEO who just left us after a decade, Lan Tawney. He's a great guy. We miss him. We're in the process of looking for our next CEO. We've got 85 applicants, narrowed down to 10, and we're going to narrow that down to 3 in the next few weeks, and we hope to have someone new in the seat by January. But yeah, Land was, I don't know if anybody knows Lan Tawney, but he's been around conservation for years. He was the guy that really took BHA from sort of a regional thing and made it the national and North American organization that it is today. So yeah, Lan talked a lot about our public lands legacy and how we have to caretake it. It's not gonna take care of itself. So that is my presentation. Heather, if we want to move into questions or however you want to take it next, I'm ready.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, thank you so much, Chris. It's Great overview, and I think it's nice to hear the clarification on backcountry, that it's more of a state of mind and it's about access and opportunity. Because I think, when you think backcountry, you think wilderness and out in the boonies, and most of our core lakes are pretty close to metropolitan areas and aren't what people would think of as backcountry. So it's good to see some of those examples. And I see a lot of nexus of where we can work together. Your Armed Forces Initiative in particular, we are part of the Army, and we're
Mhm.
always looking for ways to support our military families. And so that just makes a lot of sense. Your collegiate program, building that next generation of stewards. We're always looking for ways to connect to universities and get young people out working on our lands. Your responsible OHV use, that's something that we deal with. Well, all public lands deal with, and important to get that messaging out and working with hunters and anglers on that responsible use. So I just see so many ways that we can work together. And I know we only had two examples to share today, but hope that we can expand upon that in the future. There was a question in the chat from one of our rangers in California. He asked if there is a chapter in Southern California. Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, well, for the most part, each state has its own chapter. So there's not a Southern California chapter, there's a California chapter, but the chapter covers the whole state. So yes, and actually our California coordinator, Devin, is in San Diego.
Okay.
So yeah, we do have a presence in Southern California, and would be glad to connect him with Devin.
And it looks like someone asked a similar question. For those of us who might be interested in partnering with BHA, would it be possible to get a list of regional/state contacts?
Yep.
I'm in particular Western US, Colorado, and then it looked like Aaron posted your website with the chapters. So that link is in the chat for anyone that's interested. And then John Gale posted, here's our staff contact list. So if folks are monitoring the chat, there's some good um, references there or resources there, the chapters and the staff. So yeah, looks like that's a good way for folks to get started, to reach out to those staff members and those chapters. Would that be the best way to go about it?
Yeah, or just reach out to me and I'll point you to the right person. But our staff page on the website lists out who covers what. Um, and you could probably find the right person if you're looking at the coordinators. Coordinators are the ones that would be doing most of this work, but feel free to reach out to any one of us and we'll connect you with the right people.
And I will put your email in the chat as well. Are there other questions that people have? And feel free to come off mute. You don't have to type in the chat. If you have questions for Chris. Or if we have anyone on the call that's either from Shelbyville or Buckhorn that wants to share your experience working with BHA, that'd be great to hear from you too. I'm not seeing anything else in the chat or hearing anybody come off mute. Oh, here we go. Could you talk a bit about BHA's capabilities and interests for helping or taking on habitat projects?
Sure. Habitat projects for us, they vary greatly depending upon, I think, region. So in the Western US, it's, you know, it could be removing invasive species like junipers. It could be planting sage in places where sage has been impacted negatively. In the east, it's similar but different species. We do removals of invasive species. We've done plantings here. We do um, some oddball stuff. Like in Vermont, they do a thing called an apple tree release, which I'd never heard of before. They get together with some public land managers there and trim apple trees at a certain time of the year so that they fruit well annually and provide food for wildlife. So there's all kinds of things that we do. I think large scale habitat work is happening mainly in the West with fence removal in Colorado in particular, but also in other Western states. I think as I said, sort in my presentation, coming into the stewardship piece and the boots on the ground is something that, is newer at BHA, and we're definitely looking to do more of that. Our members are willing. It's been good for us to create the new relationships in that area and expand into something new. And I think we're interested in hearing about what's needed. So we're pretty open to anything. And one of my questions for you all today is going to be, what do you need, especially on the habitat piece. So I don't know if that thoroughly answers the question, but
Thanks. Yeah, we have invasive species issues at all 400 plus projects around the country. So that's always a need there. Removing invasives and then planting natives and trying to combat that, not only terrestrial but aquatic, because we are a water-based agency. Um, but there's other habitat projects for wildlife, food plots, and for hunting opportunities that I could see would work well with your organization and your members that would be interested in working on that type of work.
yeah, and I'm sure there's plenty of good examples that are not popping into my head at this moment too, of different types of things that we've done. It's a big organization spread across a pretty big landscape. So it's
Any other questions for Chris?
Hi, Heather. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, this is Wesley Henson out at Perry Lake in Northeast Kansas. I just wanted to kind of share a couple projects that we've done with I put one in the chat. There was a link to a trash cleanup day we did with BHA last summer. Uh, Prior to that, we did a habitat slash trail improvement project with BHA. They built several trailheads for us and cleaned out cedar trees and things like that. And I just kind of want to share with everybody in the group that BHA was outstanding to work with. They were very accommodating to our schedules and short staff issues and things like that, and brought out a lot of great volunteers. Both times, I think 10 to 15 volunteers at both events. Just nothing but great to work with, and they're always reaching out, checking in, seeing how things are going, if we need more help. So I just wanted to kind of share that they've been great to work with, and we really appreciate their help.
That is awesome to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that, Wesley.
Yep.
yeah, thanks, Wesley. The Kansas folks have really been getting busy doing stewardship and project work all over the state with a bunch of different agencies. So yeah, they're one that's really stepping up and getting involved in lots of different stuff on the
Yeah,
landscape.
they've done several projects here at Perry, and then several of our neighboring Core Lakes have had BHA days, and then they've been partnering with our state wildlife agency at a lot of different locations around the state to get work done. So just an incredible group of guys, and just wanted to say thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll take that link that you shared in the chat to the article, and I'll post that. We have a page for BHA on our Natural Resource Management Gateway, and I'll post that in our success stories so that others can check that out as well. And I am recording this, but I was going to ask you, Chris, if you can, after the call, send me your slides,
Sure.
because I'll also post that on our Natural Resource Management Gateway training page. We'll post the recording, but then we'll also post the slides as well.
Yep, we'll do.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I think
I've
we'll
got some,
probably, oh, go ahead. Yeah, go
I've
ahead.
got some questions for you all if there's time.
Of course.
Sure. So I'm interested to hear, what with having heard me, explain BHA, if you've not heard of us before, and hearing a little bit about what we can do and how we want to work with the Corps. Are there any ideas? Does anybody have an idea of like what we could do at your specific facility? Your location, like is there anything that jumps out at you as being a fit, and what is it? And it doesn't have to be a commitment to it. I'm just curious to hear, because I think we've only worked with the Army Corps at a few places really. But this MOU is going to open it up, and I'm interested to hear about what the opportunities might be.
I have a thought, maybe a question on that.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Jesse Brownlee, Rogue Basin Project in Southern Oregon. You mentioned earlier in the presentation that one of y'all's initiatives is in general just making sure forests are managed well. That's a Pandora's box for us. One of the challenges that we have is we have some pretty solid overstocking issues, density issues that are heavily contributing to wildfire concerns, fuel loads, that sort of thing. And just generally don't provide good edge or good habitat for a lot of the species that you guys may be interested in. Also looking at it from the perspective that you guys have the ability to, maybe lobby isn't the right word, but become potentially politically involved. Is there any leverage that you may have to get attention for like fire and fuels management, forest health type budget requests that may be of similar interest to you guys?
Not exactly my area of expertise, but I will say that at both the federal and state level, I know that we have worked on those issues. I can't address Oregon specifically, but yes, I mean, I think we're on your side on that for sure. If you want, I can connect you with Chris Hager, who covers Oregon for us as a coordinator, and I'm sure he'd have a much more succinct and knowledgeable answer than I do of
Okay,
what's
that's
been
fair.
done in Oregon. Yeah. If
Yeah.
you if you can send me an email, I'll connect you with Chris.
Okay, I can look it up also. I was also interested in the collegiate program. That's something we'll look in at our local level. And when you had the comment on the stewardship, most of that is something we could do. Heather made the comment about invasive species removal. That is something we need across the country. But we also have some challenges with cattle, like range cattle that get into our ESA listed critical habitat streams and things that really affect our riparian habitats.
Yeah.
And we have some long-standing challenges with that. If that's something that you guys may be able to assist with as well.
That would be that would be putting up fence rather than taking it down. That would be different. But that's a problem that exists in a lot of places, including central Pennsylvania here where I am. Keeping cattle out of the streams is unfortunately a problem everywhere. Yeah, I think again, connect you with Chris Hager and have a conversation. I think that might be an interesting one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
there's a couple more things in the chat, but one of the things I just wanted to bring up too, something that Jesse kind of touched on, but you also touched on in your presentation was advocacy. And that's definitely something that, the Corps of Engineers, one of the things we suffer from is that we are represented by different congressional committees than most of the federal land management agencies. We're under Transportation and Infrastructure and EPW. And most of the legislation that comes out that impacts federal land management agencies is under House Natural Resources and conservation. And so a lot of times the Corps and NOAA also, because they're similar to us, get left out of some of those key land management, recreation, and conservation um, bills that get put out there. So I'm not lobbying for anything, but as far as support, we do rely on our partners and nonprofits to share our story as well so that we're not forgotten.
Yeah, that's a good one for our DC staff to hear. I'm sure that um, they're aware of it, but it never hurts to hear it again as a reminder because that is unusual. We're usually talking about Department of the Interior and Natural Resources Committee stuff, and I did not know that you were under transportation. So
Mhm. Yep. So let me read some of the things in the chat. So Kim Fallon said, making our entire boundary fence wildlife friendly, from changing the wire spacing, removing extraneous wire, changing out structures at known movement corridors, liking the idea I saw on the BHA website of beers, bands, and barbed wire strands in Colorado.
yeah,
Then William Butler said, always looking for welcome volunteers here in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Work a lot with threatened piping plover numbers and preserving native ocean shoreline habitats. So I don't, that's something you all might be interested in.
yeah.
Josh Brown said, another solution for cattle and streams could be providing alternative water sources that are easily accessible near forage and shade. Marcy Mantra said, do you work with efforts to stop or reduce illegal ATVs? We have a lot of problems with illegal ATV use, and they erode our trails and often take down what we put up, rocks and large downed trees that we try to strategically place to hide them.
Yes, we do. To the extent that we can, and that's usually public information, signage. At one point, we had a reward program for basically, turning in illegal users. I'm actually not sure if that's still active, but yeah, again, this is something that connect with regional staff and discuss. But yes, we do. We would be interested in hearing about that and working on it.
Dylan Brown said, we would love a presence, and we have several projects we would like to see accomplished dealing with invasive species and native plantings. We are in a pretty unique situation in Southern Virginia, Piedmont, where there is little regional public land. However, we have about 6,400 acres of land here at Philpott Lake, and we join with 5,000 acres of state wildlife management land. Both of us and the state are often underfunded, which prevents us from rehabilitating these areas to their full potential. All right, I'm looking through the chat more. John Gale mentioned the OHV reward program, and I didn't mention him. Sorry about that, John. We also have John Gale on the chat. He's traveling, so he wasn't able to join in on video, but he is the Vice President for Government Relations for BHA, also a good contact as well. And then he posted the sign and education program that you mentioned, Chris. Let's see. The only other one I saw in the chat was Aaron, and he didn't have a question, but he said lots of ideas here in Central Texas. We should talk. Aaron, if you want to come off mute, if you have anything you'd like to mention in particular that you might like to work on with BHA.
Hey, not sure if you can hear me.
Yeah, we got you.
All right, great. Yeah, there's kind of too much stuff to list out like a comprehensive list, and I'm not sure exactly the organization's capabilities. It's kind of like what you'd be good at and have the personnel and the motivation to tackle. We have so much land here, and we could always use a good partner. So I guess if I could get the contact for your Central Texas chapter, and we could go
Sure.
from there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Texas is active, very active. Be glad to connect you. We'll have to get a list out of all the regional coordinators to all of you folks. Maybe I can provide that to Heather and you can send it out so people can have easy access to their nearest coordinator.
Yeah,
That would be awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we'll do.
So Michelle in Portland asked, do you have examples of access improvement projects that address ABA accessibility access, specifically water access?
ADA access?
ABA? Michelle, you want to come off mute? And
Yeah, ADA is the federal standard of ADA. So, those who have accessibility challenges. Maybe
Yeah,
like boat launches that are more geared towards that, or any other type, any type of access. But I was thinking even more specifically water.
Not that I know of. I do know what you mean with the the launching facilities. I've seen those in the past. I don't think we've done a project like that, to my knowledge, anywhere. Not to say that we wouldn't if we could get funding for it. We have done in a bunch of different states, and I can't name them off the top of my head, but I know we've done a bunch of improvements to access for ADA compliant hunting areas. It's usually like a and you may even have these on core properties, places that folks with disabilities can easily get to hunt, and then there's usually some sort of a structure to provide concealment and protection from the elements. And we've done a bunch of work to rehab those in Virginia, Pennsylvania, I'm sure other places that I don't know of. So that's probably the limit of the ADA type work we've done to date, but I don't think it's something we would cross off the list because it's access, right? So yeah, we'd be interested. Those things are probably fairly expensive, I would think.
well, in fact, the picture you showed of Shelbyville, that structure where the young man was shooting at the deer in the forest, that is an accessible structure. That whole pathway, I don't think
okay.
is, because we walked that pathway, and I think it'd be tough if you were in a wheelchair. But that particular location along that 3D archery trail was accessible. So, I mean, not water access, but an example
Right.
of where we work together on something that's accessible.
That's great. I didn't realize that's what that was. I'm glad you told me.
Hey, Chris, this is Nick. I'm out in the Los Angeles district. So my area out here is quite unique because we have such a high urban environment out here. So, but a lot of people wouldn't believe it if I told them that this area actually has a pretty high equestrian standpoint out here. So there's plenty of equestrian groups that live locally in the area, and they're very serious about their wildlife in the area and keeping things natural. One of the projects that we're working at out in the high desert area is we're doing a cooperative agreement with the Southern California Mountains Foundation, and we have a lot of issues with UTV trespassing in the area, and that is causing issues for our endangered species that live in that area. So with this agreement that we're doing, they'll be assisting with beautification of the area, so such as barbed wire fencing, as well as taking some natural approaches, such as doing some large dumping of debris, what they call chunking, in order to make it difficult for the UTV. But I could definitely see BHA assisting with any kind of fencing issues that we might have out there. We're lucky to have the Pacific Crest Trail right through that area as well too. So we actually have folks that will typically come across the property and to go fishing at one of the little areas out the creek out there. But I can definitely see BHA possibly supporting with some reforestation, removal of invasive species of that area, any type of fencing that we might have in that area. And most certainly, you know, assisting with National Public Lands Day, which is always something we all take part of. But yeah, I was just reading the bios on the folks in California. It looks like they're all, a lot of them live relatively within my district area, so that's good. But yeah, I think I could definitely see some support coming from BHA from the LA district.
Yeah, that's great. Reach out to Devin if you
Yeah.
if you see him there.
The page, I did see Eric Hansen as the co-chair, or
Yeah, Eric, that's the chapter level. They're the volunteers. Devin will be on the staff page, but again, we'll send out a list with geographies attached to coordinators, make it easy for you.
great, I appreciate it.
Yeah, sounds good. How about public education opportunities on, you know, to turn away from stewardship a bit? Like what kind of public education opportunities do you guys provide? And is that something we could help with as well when it comes to, you know, wild critters or talking about hunting and angling?
I think there's plenty of opportunity for that. Through our park rangers do a lot of interpretive programs, whether in our campgrounds or junior ranger talks or going out into schools, or having schools come to us. Less of that these days as our budgets get cut, but that is also where it helps to have partners who can step in and assist with that, the educational component, because it's so important, especially for future stewards of our natural resources. So I definitely could see some opportunities there with the educational component.
Yeah, me too. And it's another way that our volunteers and staff get involved. And it's, you know, we have this suite of opportunities, especially for volunteers. They can, you know, some of them are really interested in sitting down and talking to congressmen and women, and we have an avenue for them to do that. And some of them really want to do the boots on the ground work, and some of them really want to run fundraising events, and some of them really want to teach other people what they know about the outdoors and in general, but hunting and fishing in particular. And they're really passionate about that. So I think in almost every chapter, we've got a group of folks that are interested in sharing their knowledge and creating new hunters and anglers and outdoor enthusiasts, public land enthusiasts. So yeah, that'd be another place we could help out, especially if your budgets aren't what they used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in special events that we host, like eco meets and public lands days and every kid outdoors, kids in the parks. I mean, there's a lot of places where we could use the assistance of volunteers from your organization to supplement our waning staff because we just don't have the seasonals that we used to have and the full-time staff. So we're always looking for help in that arena.
Yeah. What's the best way to create some communication continuity between, say, a state chapter and the Army Corps facilities and properties in their area? Do you guys do newsletters? Is there a central place where we could because sometimes like a constant flow of information will turn into something eventually.
Well, you can always send things through me and I'll get it out to
Okay.
everyone. But as far as if you're looking for regional focus, I can send you a list of our. So we have 40 districts in the core. We have 8 regions. We call them divisions, but 40 districts, and each of those district offices have someone in the natural resource management branch that works in partnerships and volunteers. So I
Okay.
can get you that list of our folks, and if you want to distribute that out to your
Yeah.
chapters, that can help with that direct contact. So it's, not like, oh, I'm just calling public affairs. They can call a specific person for
Yeah.
that
No, that's
outreach.
good.
But yeah, anytime you want to send something through me, I will get it out to everyone or get it to the right place. If you have a chapter in, Colorado or New Mexico or wherever that is looking to do something specific, I can make sure they're connected to the right people.
Okay. Yeah, good. Yeah, I'd like to send that list out to the chapters and the coordinators too, sort of get them thinking and reaching out and not just have it be, one way from you all out to us.
There was another thing in the chat. I think just going back to where you were asking where it might work together. This is from, I believe, John Martin Reservoir. They said, I'll be reaching out to Brian Jones, the contact person for Colorado. We're currently looking into youth hunts, archery range, fishing classes, habitat projects. We have 22,000 acres of hunting and fishing land, so any kind of assistance and partnership would be worth exploring.
Brian Jones would be your man. He ran youth hunting programs in Texas for, I think, 10 years. So yeah, he'd be a good one.
And then Todd Linkwood said, I'd recommend that local BHA chapters reach out to operation project managers within their areas of operations. I'll have to see if I can track down a current list of OPMs. I don't have that at my fingertips, but if I can gather that together, I'll get that to you as well, Chris.
Okay.
Right. Well, we are just about out the hour that we set aside, and I want to respect everybody's time. Really appreciate all the interaction today. This is great to see the interest and get the dialogue started here. Really appreciate, Chris, your time, and John online chiming in as well. We'll get a lot of resources out to everyone. We will post this presentation along with the slides on the gateway as soon as we can, and look forward to working together with BHA. I think this is going to be great.
Yeah, and for our part, we're excited. It's great to have a new partner and work together to make sure that our public lands are the best they can be. The public land and waters, I guess, too, right? You guys got a lot of water. So thank you. Appreciate the time today. And thanks for hearing about BHA, and we look forward to working with you all.